Living in Costa Rica has some amazing benefits like the beautiful beaches, the warm sunshine, the fresh food, the friendly people, and of course, the monkeys. But before you go and buy a piece of property in Costa Rica, there are definitely things that you will want to know. In this video, I'll break down 6 things to know when buying a property in Costa Rica as a foreigner. Stick around until the end of the video where I'll share an amazing hack that I learned about recently. Hey, what's up? Darren Voros here. My mission is to help you reduce your real estate investing education time from months to minutes. Subscribe not to miss what's coming. I visited Costa Rica for the first time about 10 years ago, and it's safe to say that I've been in love with this country ever since. I've traveled here every year for the last 10 years, and this year I finally decided to purchase a piece of land that I will be developing. Buying property here is a little different than back home in Canada, so here are the 6 things that you should know when buying in Costa Rica. Number 6, offer and due diligence time. Making an offer in Costa Rica on a property is similar to how we do it in Canada, except that real estate agents here are not licensed. Therefore, they will put together the terms of the deal, but a lawyer will usually draft your official offer. A standard real estate transaction here in Costa Rica lasts about 45 days, which is about half the time that a transaction in Canada takes. So be prepared for the tightened timelines. You can ask for a longer closing, but anything over 60 days is usually something that raises a few eyebrows. Having said that, when you're doing something like buying land, I wouldn't be afraid to ask for what you want. It's really important to have enough time to do your due diligence. The good thing about the due diligence time is that it's generally longer here. So for instance, on a 45-day closing, you'll usually have a 30-day due diligence period. Remember, you don't get 30 days for due diligence and then another 45 days after that you close. You get 30 days to do your due diligence, at which time your offer becomes firm, and then 15 days after that, you would need to be prepared to close. Number 5, hire a good lawyer. Because of the differences in Costa Rican law versus how we transact real estate in Canada, I would suggest hiring a good law firm with extensive experience in real estate. In Costa Rica, they have squatters' rights. According to the Costa Rican law, a person can acquire rights to a property if the property owner allows that person to use or maintain possession of the property for more than a year. I recently made an offer on a property that I didn't end up purchasing, and once the lawyers took a look at the deed, they quickly told me to run away from that property as it had many complications on the title. This saved me a huge headache and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, as I wouldn't have been able to do anything with that land. If there's a complication with the title or ownership of the property, you can't even get a building permit. Number 4, the escrow process. I'm not sure why I was surprised by this in retrospect, but moving money to Costa Rica is not so simple. This means that when you buy a piece of property in Costa Rica, there'll be a lawyer that assists you, but you will also have to go through an escrow company who acts as an intermediary for the bank. They will be the ones who will verify all of your documents and submit them to the bank so that you can wire your money to close on your real estate transaction. In Canada, we move our money to our lawyers who hold that money in trust, and then they advance the funds. In Costa Rica, that all has to flow through the banks, so it adds a layer of complexity. The escrow company will ask you to complete a Know Your Client document, which tells them all about where the funds you plan to use are coming from. These funds will need to be able to be tracked and traced, and in some cases will need to have been sitting in an account for 90 days. For instance, if you're using money from the proceeds of a recent sale, you'll need to produce the legal paperwork showing that you sold the property, the evidence of that money entering your bank account, and then the history of those funds since that time. I don't know about you, but if I have money sitting in my account, I generally like to get it to work for me, so I move things around a lot. When it came time to purchase the property here in Costa Rica, that definitely complicated matters. So I had to get my CPA involved to verify everything and then write a letter that needed to be notarized. To complicate matters even further, some documents need to be apostilled, which means that you need to take them to your local consulate and have them verify that the documents are legit. All of this to say that the moment that you make an offer on a transaction in Costa Rica, start working on the escrow process right away because it can take some time. Number 3, legal fees. Legal fees in Canada are calculated based on the amount of time that the lawyers put into the transaction. A standard real estate transaction in Canada usually has about $2,000 of legal fees. In Costa Rica, fees are calculated as a percentage of the transaction amount. That percentage is usually around 4%. So on our recent purchase, we paid almost $50,000 in legal fees. Now, these fees do cover the escrow process as well, but be prepared to work these into your numbers and your budgets because it's not the same as it is in Canada. Number 2, water rights and building permits. This probably should have been number one because it's the most important part when it comes to buying land in Costa Rica. But not everyone is going to be buying land and building. Some of you are going to be buying an existing piece of property, so this one won't be relevant. But if you're buying land and plan to build on it, you need to understand the water situation. We take this for granted in Canada because fresh water and the infrastructure around that is usually not something that we consider. But here in Costa Rica, fresh water is a problem. So before you purchase a property, make sure that you can get a water letter. You cannot get a building permit here without a water letter. And the water letter will tell you how much capacity you have on your property. Even if you're planning to just build a single family dwelling on a piece of land, don't assume that that property has capacity for water. In some cases, you may be required to pay to have a water line installed, which could take months or even years to get approved and then installed. The water authorities here in Costa Rica have a tremendous amount of power, so get to know the process and fully understand what the potential timelines can look like if things go well or if they don't go well. Pardon the pun. And the number one thing you should know before buying property in Costa Rica is you can't finance your properties here as a foreigner. In Canada, we use the bank to finance the majority of our property purchases. On a standard rental, we as the buyers come up with a 20% down payment, and the bank will kick in the remaining 80% that will be mortgaged. While it's not impossible to get financing in Costa Rica, it's not very common, so expect to pay for your properties in cash. As promised, I wanted to share a hack that I discovered recently. As a foreigner, if you invest a minimum of $150,000 into real estate in Costa Rica, you can apply for temporary residency. Having temporary residency can be a huge benefit as it allows you to stay in the country longer, you get certain privileges, and you can open a bank account and use the banking system here. Now, before you get too excited about using the banking system here in Costa Rica, understand that it's very different than in Canada. While you can get financing if you are a resident, interest rates here are significantly higher. They are almost the same as what we would pay to have a private lender finance something in Canada. So in most cases, it doesn't make sense to use the bank's money. Most investors here either pay cash or they will use a home equity line of credit to purchase something. If you have questions about buying property in Costa Rica, feel free to leave those in the comments section below. For any information about my various courses and trainings, you can check out my website at darrenvoros.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram where I post regularly. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on Tuesday.